Hi, Gina.
Hey, how are you? I'm gonna assume that you're gonna maybe share a PowerPoint at some time, and I should make you co-host. Oop, I can't hear you now. You're muted. Should I make you co-host?
Now, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, well, I had to turn on my audio and forgot to
Gotcha.
turn on my speakers.
I'm gonna make you co-host, so
Okay.
you can share your screen later. Right now, I've got this introduction slide up that we're gonna do for the summer.
Okay.
And for our classes in the fall, so that people will see something when they come in that thanks the people who paid for the summer, essentially. So I hope all my emails this morning made sense. I'm sorry if I seemed very last minute about it. It just occurred to me that maybe you couldn't get in the class. So.
I sent email to Leah. I didn't have any kind of ID or anything, and she sent me one, and that worked fine.
Okay, good.
We're good. I can get there. I'll be doing a lot of shifting back and forth on the camera, I think, today. Maybe not a whole lot, but we'll see how that goes. Might make everybody dizzy. I don't know.
That's all right. That's all right.
See, right now you're looking at a blank page. It's always good. I can just turn my camera around here. Should be able to point it up. Back of my head. I can turn my chair. And I'm sitting here. Yeah, that'll work.
Now I can wave to you because I can see you. I wasn't about to wave to paper a minute ago. So.
I forgot that's what it was looking at.
Yeah. The other image you see with the red scarf is my computer at the office.
Okay.
And that's where it's recording so that I can post the recording afterwards on our website. But we won't be going to Facebook Live because you've got a smaller group and stuff. And so I hope everybody found the download that we had for materials.
Yeah, I think so. You know, and I sent them out handouts. Since I have their email addresses, I can just send out handouts and things like that. Because some they definitely probably gonna need to look at beforehand and maybe have traced out if they want to paint along with me. Which would be easier for them, might learn more if they sort of went right along with me as I did it. I don't know, just kind of trying it out. I wish I had two cameras and a little switch where I could just switch back and forth the cameras and one looking down at the paper.
It's all right. It is what it is. Hey, I'm just excited that you figured out a way to paint so they can see it and stuff.
They can. You know, the color is awful, but you know, what can you do?
Everybody's got a different monitor too, and we can't control what they see on their monitor either.
Yeah.
I don't know if you got my email. I'm training people to be classroom monitors also this summer.
Oh, okay.
And so we have a woman who's joining us. Her name is Judy McDowell. She's not taking your class. She's just learning how to admit people and watch for comments and watch for people who might be looking confused, like they're not sure what's going on and having trouble with Zoom and stuff. So she's not here to attend, kind of like I'm not here to attend, but kind of like I do every once in a while, I might have a question. So I just interject and go, well, I didn't hear you say what color of blue that was or whatever, in case it's important.
Yeah, you might, when I start trying to say things that I expect people to know that obviously they wouldn't know.
Right. Well, and also like if you switch screens and you start talking like we see something, but we don't, then she or I will be the person who say, by the way, I don't think we see what you want us to see. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and admit these people who are here. I know we've got about 6 more minutes before class starts, but I know people are excited.
Oh, I have one question. Will they be able to ask questions while I'm talking?
If they unmute themselves, they can. You can hear it. Everybody comes into our classes muted, except for like a couple of classes that are very small. And so unmuting and muting is the first thing we train people on in the orientation. And sometimes if they don't remember, they may just wave their hand or I see their face start talking and I go, hold on, you're not unmuted yet. So I see Judy McDowell has joined us, and I'm just going to let Judy know that from now on, I'm going to give you co-host privileges. Let's see if I can do that on my other screen. Oops. Gotta find her again. Okay. And once I make you co-host, Judy, you will see if people are in the waiting room and you can admit them. And I don't know if I was successful at that yet or not. Didn't.
Morning, Janice.
Okay. All right. So Judy is successfully a co-host, so she can help me watch the chat and stuff. And we'll have a few more people join your class, I'm sure, in the next few minutes. Janice, your mic is unmuted. Did you want to say hi or?
Well, Ken said hi, and I said hi, and then I really it back, or I can do that.
Either way.
I can do that.
Okay.
It'll be interesting when Gloria gets on here. You know, we have the same web address and everything, and it seems to have worked in the past. Sometimes it changes our names around. And yeah. One time I went to share screen, and the screen it shared was her. So,
oh my gosh.
We'll see how this works out. She's painting in the dining room, and I'm painting in my study here.
Gina, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay.
Who is it I'm listening to?
Judy.
Yes, ma'am. What can I do for you?
I need to let you know that I don't have a webcam on my desktop, and I'd also, at this point, don't have the Zoom downloaded to my desktop, so I'm using an iPad.
Okay.
I don't know if that's going to be successful or not. Also, the email that I got, I couldn't find on my desktop. I was going to try to get it, but anyway. So here's where I am.
Do you see, has anybody popped up that said they're in a waiting room or anything?
I don't know if I have the right screen. Right now, I still have the screen that's got the sponsors listed on the right.
Okay. I'm not sure the people who are admitting, there may be a pop-up window somewhere. I'm going to go ahead and admit people today so that I don't have to worry about if you can see it or not, if that makes sense.
Okay, I see you in a pop-up window.
Okay.
But I don't, let me see if I should be able to look. And the list of participants just shows me you, me, Kenneth Williams, and a phone number that I don't recognize, and Janice Reed.
Oh, so not everybody's.
Some other people.
Okay.
There are several other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know I'm going to ask the phone number to unmute so I can maybe change your name so that we can know who you are. It's a 501-681-9664. Can you hear me? There's someone who's joined by telephone audio, and I'd like to change your name to an actual name.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Irma Peterson.
Okay, Irma, I'll change that so that it has your name instead of your phone number there.
Great.
And then I'll mute you. All right, Judy, I'm going to mute you as well. I'm going to stop sharing the LifeQuest screen.
Can you see mine, Gina? Lynn Smith?
I see your name. Mm-hmm. And I see you also.
Okay, hi.
Hi. So now I see everybody in class, and it's 10 o'clock, and this is Beginning Watercolor with Kenneth Williams. We are recording this so that if you miss something, you can watch this later on our website. Ken's going to be maybe switching back and forth from where he's painting to his computer. When he switches to his computer, we get a great profile shot of him because he doesn't have 2 webcams, and that's all right. So if you see him talking to the side, he's really talking to you.
I keep looking at the computer. Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay. So I'm going to let him take over now and introduce himself and start his class.
And Kenneth, do you prefer us to have our video also off, or do you care?
Oh, leave the video on. Yeah. I see Lynn. I need to see me. Gina, I can't see me. How do I get there?
I can see you.
Up in the corner, see if you see speaker view and gallery view, or like 9 little squares in a box. And
Okay,
then see,
just do the speaker video and then I was looking at everyone else. I still just, oh, I'm there. Okay.
well, that's because you're speaking now. So you'll see yourself as the main attraction while you're speaking.
Okay. Well, that's washed out white. I tell you, this camera and this contrast. I'm speaking at the side, definitely. Keep looking at myself there.
That's okay.
You can even see the corner of the computer. Okay, well, let's get started. We really do have a lot to cover in 4 classes in a month. So when I thought about making this, what I really wanted to do is give you really a solid grounding in the basics of watercolor. I know I kind of learned on my own, and there was a lot of stuff in books I read that really skimmed over things I didn't have a clue about. And so I want to cover some of these things that are really, I guess, obvious to a watercolorist that has been doing it many years, or, you know, in a lot of books, they have limited space and they just don't cover everything in quite the detail. But you get some of these basics down and it makes watercolor a whole lot easier to deal with. So let's get right down to looking at materials first. That's always the first thing you always want to talk about is what do we need? What are we going to use here? We'll just begin with brushes. That's as good a spot as any. And I have my little handful here. And here they are. Oh, look at these wonderful things. These are pretty much what I would use most of the time, except for this flat. I'm not much of a large flat user. I recommended you get one because so many people like to do washes with a 3/4 inch flat or maybe even larger. You're going to always gear your brush size to your paper size. If you're doing a whole, 22 by 30 inch sheet of paper, you're not going to want to use a little tiny brush. That's not the way to paint. You want a brush that'll match your paper. So if I were doing large sheets, I've got 2 inch flat, or here's a big wash brush, things like that. You want to gear that to the size. But for everything we're going to do and what you're mostly going to probably do, these brushes that I have here will work just fine. And this works a great wash brush for lots of people. This is a 1/2 inch one, and I use it for a lot of various things, not for making washes particularly, at least not large ones. For most washes, I suspect I use this brush right here. This is very inexpensive. It's part synthetic and part some kind of animal hair that they don't even say what kind it is. It's just a soft hair. This is a Royal and Langnickel Zen 14. I looked this up on the internet. They call it a round brush. It's really more of a mop brush. It's a Z83R. If you ever wanted, you don't need to get brushes exactly like mine or exactly the same size. Basically get in the ballpark. You need a good brush that will hold a lot of water though, and these will do it. And these will work fine up to, I might go larger if I got bigger than 11 by 14, but this will do 11 by 14 painting very, very easily.
And what size did you say that was?
That's called 14. And just because this says 14, the sizes are not standardized. You go to another brand and another 14 will look totally different. What can I say? Here's a Princeton size 12, and you know, it's way bigger than this Blick size 10 that I use a lot, very commonly. And here is a Blick 10 compared to the Blick 12 compared to the Princeton 12. And you can see a huge difference. The same number brush, that's the Blick, that's the Princeton here. So you really can't hardly go by numbers. You really need to look at them and pick a brush that is suitable for you. For me, this brush here, this 10 Blick, it's a Blick Master Synthetic round. Really a nice brush, all synthetic. By the way, brushes can come in natural hair. The very best are sable. And then you can also get synthetic and synthetic mixes. And I used to use a sable brush when I was working. I'm a science illustrator. I really didn't introduce myself, but I'm a retired science illustrator. And I used sable brushes and wore them out. These synthetics last a lot longer, take a lot more abuse, and I just can't really tell a great deal of difference in the way they perform. Maybe the same size a sable brush would hold a little more paint, which is, you know, nice, but you can dip your brush a little more often. They release it a little more consistently, but otherwise, it's really, to me, not at all worth the price to get a sable brush. I love these synthetics and really wouldn't use anything else. So a number 10 is a very good size to have. I know a lot of paint kits will come with these number 4 brushes or smaller, maybe a little larger, but a number 4 brush is for detail. It will not give you a good wash at all. It's even, and I'll be demonstrating that and just showing you what I mean. Another very useful brush is a liner brush or a rigger. This one's a number 4. Anywhere between a 2 and a 4 is fine. A 3 is a good one. These are good for making tree limbs mostly and other fine lines. You might even write with it if you want. But they're a handy brush to have. 2 other brushes I use rather consistently are these 2 flats here. This one is a 3/16, I think. 3/16, about worn off the writing on it. It's a Richson. Again, the brand is not terribly important. It was the shape here, which just happens to be the right width for a lot of bricks that I draw. So if I'm doing a building with bricks, I can just take this little flat square and just go and do lots of bricks if I want to. So handy brush just for me. You may not do a lot of bricks and you may not want that. Another very good brush, generally you don't consider them for watercolor, but they do work quite fine, are Hog Bristle Brushes. And they really work well for some specialty things. I make a lot of foliage with this, and in one of our classes, we'll probably make some foliage. And you use it very dry, very thick paint, and then just jab it into the paper like that. And you can make some real nice foliage. You can also lay it flat on the paper like this. And in a circular motion with fairly dry paint, you can make very interesting clouds and all kinds of textural effects. Water by dragging it across. You've got the right kind of paper and things like that. So it's a handy brush to have, and I always keep it with me, particularly for textural things. You can lay it out like this when it's wet, and it'll fairly well hold a shape where you can make nice grass strokes. A lot like a fan stroke if you would like to do that as well. Other things we need, what am I going to do? I'm going to hold up a few palettes. Palettes come in all different kinds of sizes, shapes, and everything else. You can just get anything you want. I have a lot of small palettes that I take with me when I just go out sketching. I'm a sketcher as much as anything. I'd much prefer to be outside sketching than I would in the studio sketching. Here's my sketch box. As you can see, this is actually, when you buy these, they're meant to hold 12 half pans of paint, but you can just lift out that little insert and take some of that wall mounting putty and put on the bottom of pans, and I'd get 24 in here, I think. yeah, 24, although I have a couple of full pans. Here, this green and then this gray mix I have are both full pans. I use so much green and gray. Very common colors for me to use. And gray is the pre-mix I'll tell you about that I make myself just for convenience. But now you can buy the exact same mix, and it's not as good for some reason. I think mine is much better. Again, these little palettes come in just all kinds of different kinds. Here's a Winsor Newton. Whoa, where's that camera? Back over here. This one, I thought this is going to be just perfect. It's got lots of mixing wells up here. There's 5 up here. And also it's got this little useless thing. And this tray pulls out so that you have more mixing area down here at the bottom. Another 4 or 5 areas. And I thought that'd really be handy, but to be honest, I don't know, it's just a little more gadgetry than I really use when I'm out plein air painting. So I don't use it as much. I think this little thing is meant to hold some water. It clips on the side here, and it wouldn't hold enough water to do anything, really. You might make a bigger, deeper wash with it or something. But nonetheless, let's say there's many, many kinds of palettes like this. This one you can get at Hobby Lobby or off any of the art supply catalogs. I think it's about $4 or $5 and holds 18 paints in the little well. Works well. You wouldn't want to leave very wet paint in here though, because when you closed it, it'd drain on each other and it'd be a real mess. Put these out of the way, and a lot of what I do my mixing on is just a simple white china plate here. Works really well. I've got a couple of paints stuck up here again with some wall mount putty, just for, get that over here. Here's that little blue dot. That's just a little bit of sticky putty here, and stick it on the side of the jar.
Kenneth, we can see you, but I can't see what you're holding.
Can you see that?
That's better, yes.
Yeah, I need to get closer to my face. That's what I'll do. So that's what I'm doing there. And say these just kind of barely stuck on here. It's a little bit of putty. They don't have to stay very well. Other things, porcelain, little daisy one, I think these are called. This is porcelain. This is porcelain. I use this one quite a bit. These little round wells at the top basically are to put tube paint in, a little squirt, and then do the mixing down in the square areas down here. I never do that at all. I just use all of it for mixing things around. Works a lot better for me for that. Then my studio palette here. You can see it's actually cleaned up from what it often is. But it tends to get a mess. That's okay. You know, the only paint that really matters as far as keeping very clean is yellow. Yellow can really get messed up with other pigments. And some people will have 2 yellows, so that one they'll mix maybe reds with to make oranges, and another one for green. And that way it kind of keeps them a little cleaner. I don't bother with that. For one thing, I really don't use yellow that much. It's not one of my favorite things, and I do my green mixing a little bit differently, and we'll talk about that too when we get into color more. So this is what I'll be painting with. And what else do we need? We need tape of some kind. This is painter's tape, works great. But also, you know, you pull it out here. This plain old Scotch magic tape will work. Just have to be careful when you're pulling all of these off. And that leads me to another thing I'll talk about. But paint. People wonder about pigments and what pigment to use. And you can see I've got really a ton in here. I don't need all of these. A lot of them are convenience, or I might use them for a very specific thing on occasion. I've got some Indian red here that I think I've had 5 years in that one little spot there. So I use it occasionally, and it's just exactly what I want. At other times, it's not. Some of these pigments are just things I'm trying out, playing with. There's some Potter's Pink up here, Winsor Newton. Kind of is a good mixing color. Some people will use it for flesh tones and things. I'm pretty undecided on that right now. Can't say I'd recommend it to anybody. But, you know, a lot of these are very idiosyncratic and not necessary. And that's one reason I didn't get very specific on telling you what kind of paints to use. We'll get into colors again on another class, but really, you don't need very many. Paper is another question, and it is a big problem when you're starting out on what kind of paper. There is so many kinds of paper out there. I use a variety. The very best paper, I think, is Arches or Fabriano. 100% cotton papers. They're pretty much the standard. And if you're doing a real nice painting, it's worth getting. The paper costs about $30, $35 a sheet, I think. So for me, practicing on paper that expensive, I just wouldn't practice a lot. I think it's just too expensive, and I'd be kind of hesitant to make a lot of messes. I want everything to come out perfect. So I don't recommend people getting that when they're learning watercolor. Here's some Strathmore 400 series. See the 400 up here. This is 9 by 12, 140-pound paper. There's no cotton rag content in it. It's just paper. So it's not your best paper at all, but it works really well. It's got a lot of sizing in it. And in fact, that's what I'm going to be painting on in my demonstrations here. And I would suggest you use something like it. Now, this is 400 series, and make sure you don't get the 300 series. It's just not good enough. And you'll have very unhappy results trying to paint on it. Paper really does make a difference in watercolor, and the better the paper you have, the better your painting will be. But you can make very nice paintings on this paper here. So, and you can get it anywhere. Hobby Lobby, Michael's, also any of the art supply things on the internet, you can get it. This is in a block. A block is glued all the way around, except for right back here. There's a little slot, and you can put a knife back there, a dull knife or a sharp one, and just go all the way around the edge to lift the paper off, and you get a sheet like that right off of the block. One advantage of these blocks, though, if you'll paint it, you're not getting terribly wet. You can paint right on this block, and it'll keep your paper stretched really well. I also really like to use sketchbooks, and in fact, that's what I do most of my watercoloring in. I've used these Nature Sketch Pentalics for ages, and they quit making them. That's a problem with a lot of books, and probably the next sketchbook I get, well, I have already. I got a Strathmore, and it's a 500 series, 100% cotton. What I really like about it is it's a multimedia paper. It's called, I think it's called mixed media. And really a nice weight, nice sketchbook size, and it paints very well and not terribly expensive. So I'll be using those for a while and let you know what I think about those. I still have a couple of these to go through, so I'll use these up and then they're gone. We'll be working out of them today. We'll be doing a quick painting out of that. And, you know, good books. If you're going to take art classes, a sketchbook's a handy thing to use to put your work in. Usually they're going to give you an 8.5 by 11 handout to sketch, you know, trace over real quickly, and then do your painting on. And so the book, this is 15.5 by 11 here. You can see it's pretty large, but it's a real nice size to take with you to classes. You can just flip it open and get your light board out. Here, I haven't talked about that yet, but that's what this is. Plugs in to your smartphone charger cord. Very handy. And you can just slip it in your sketchbook and trace off whatever the day's project is going to be. And it's easy to and very portable to carry around. So this combination of that light board and a sketchbook really works well for me. I've taken some of David Cook's classes and see, there's an example there of one of the paintings, and you can see I just traced it off, used my painter's tape around it, and I've got it all in a book here that I won't lose or have a lot of stray papers laying around. That's another advantage of a sketchbook, is it's all in one spot. It's also good to have some paper to test your colors on. Make sure you've got the right color, right density you want before you commit to your paper. You can also just paint on the edge of your paper or something like that and test it out. You only have to make a very tiny mark to know what you want. One
And
reason
this is
I got
Gina.
this,
I have a quick question from someone.
yes,
They said they have a Strathmore Visual Journal 140
yep.
watercolor, and they also have a Nature Sketch 130 with 25% cotton. They
Yep.
ask which one is better.
Neither one. They're both just fine.
Okay.
I use them.
Thank you.
Them both. Right now, I'm using that Nature Sketch just because I've used Nature Sketch for a long time. But I've also filled up one of those visual journals, and it's great. I like the paper in it. It maybe is a little less. It's less forgiving in some ways than the Nature Sketch, but the Nature Sketch does not lift out well at all. And if you're wanting to do a lot of like cloud lifting and things like we'll talk about, it just will not do it. It's,
Okay. Thank you for answering their question.
So, and then this brings up the tape thing. Again, telling you things that people haven't told you maybe that you might need to know. Okay, you've got your page taped off here. How do you get the tape off? Well, the best thing to do is get the edge and don't just rip it straight up or towards the painting. Pull it out and away from the painting at an angle like that, and you won't damage your painting. Sometimes, if I can do it here, I'm not sure I can do damage when I want to, but if you take the tape, and now I'm going to just rip it straight across into the painting kind, sometimes it will tear that paint. It didn't thin, but it can. So always remember to pull it away from the painting at an angle. There's one more there. You see, I'm lifting that and pulling it at an angle like that. And yeah, it's just one of those things, a lot of times nobody tells you, but it makes a real difference if you've messed up your painting. And again, one of these little books, a little sketchbook, is real nice to have just to try things out, make little paintings, sitting in your chair in the living room when you really don't feel like doing a whole lot, or you want to, you know, up there I was working on making some weeds and just trying things out, and lots of little odds and ends there, little portraits, various things. So I keep several sizes around for things like that. Let's see here. I want to talk about any more supplies. We're kind of getting a little short of time. You do need, I'm going to undo my camera here, and it's going to get shaky. So be ready. There we go. There's my tabaret, little table of what I'm using to paint. I've got my palette there. I got mixing over here handy. This is my water jar. I've got an old sweatband around the top of it that just happened to fit, and I can wipe my brush on that if I need to. Also, you'll see a roll of paper towels, a rag, paint, tape, and brushes, all handy, ready to get to. I got all those brushes. Everybody has so many brushes, and you really don't need them all. Like I say, this is more even than I normally would use. And on any one painting, you're probably only going to use a couple of brushes. Another thing I have is a little misting bottle. Very handy, and I'll be showing you that in just a moment. So without further ado, tube paints. There's some tube paints I use. This is white gouache down there. Just some brands here I like are Daniel Smith and Winsor Newton and Da Vinci. Those are all really good paint. Schminke is good paint. I generally use artist grade paint, although on earth colors like burnt sienna, burnt umber, and ochres, student grade paint is just identical, really. It's just on the more transparent colors where artist color really makes a difference. But I just buy the artist color all the way around. A tube will last you a long time. And you noticed I've got all of these in pans and the palettes, they're dry. I prefer to paint that way. Other people want to use fresh paint every time, and they'll squeeze a little out of their tube into their palette, and then they'll wash it all away when they're finished. And it wastes a lot of paint to me. And these paints stay perfectly usable, being dry. Like I say, I've got paint on that palette 5 years old, and it's still just fine. Every time before I start paint, I just give it a mist like that, a few squirts, and that kind of reactivates the surface of the paint and makes it a little easier to get the paint off of and quicker to paint with. And a next step here, we're gonna make a wash. And as you can see, I've got my mister here again. I'm putting it down, get my camera there, I can see, okay. Now I'm gonna fill up one of these little things. I use my mister just to add water to it. It's a real quick way to get a lot of wash water out there. And that's probably enough. So I filled that up. I'm going to get my brush wet. Now then, I'm going to dip it into my paint here. I've got some fresh blue here because I was running out. I'll put a little of that on there. But generally, when you get paint, wipe the brush towards you out like that. Don't smear it. Now I'm putting it into the palette and stirring it up, making me a nice blue here. I'm going to get a lot of blue because I'm going to paint some blue. So get that fairly dark. Now I'm just kind of guessing at this color because it doesn't really matter a great deal what color I get. There we go. Okay. Now I'm going to clean my brush. Thing I want to tell you is here we are at our palette again. A lot of people will jab their, I'll use that yellow, jab their brush up and down like that. If you've got a sable brush, that will really ruin your brush quick. A lot of people use a special brush to pick up paint from their palette, an old one, and for mixing and things like that. I really don't bother, but some people will use a separate brush for that to save their sable brushes from damage when they're painting. But okay, here you can see where I'm at. Okay, you just run your brush back like this over the paint, and that keeps the point in good condition. And then you're ready to mix it in some water. Okay, now I've rinsed that brush, and I'm going to mount this camera so it'll quit shaking, and we're going to paint a little bit.
What kind of brush did you use to do that with?
I was using that number 10, Blick Synthetic. Again, that's one of my favorite brushes. Now I'm going to move this camera around over to the paper, and then we'll be able to see things a little better. Here's a color chart. I given you a template that you can make your own with. It's very handy to just pull this up. I keep it laying around here in the studio. When I want to try a new color or something, I can just glance at this. You can see I bought way too many paints over the years, but there's plenty there to choose from. And I keep that handy to look at. Okay, now we're going to get this down here on the paper. I'm going to move that around like that. Here. Okay, now we're set for some painting. Straighten that up. Yeah, now we can paint. Okay, I mixed this wash up earlier. I've got my brush wet. I've kind of wiped it a couple of times just on the rim of my water bucket here. You need lots of water. Now I'm dipping my brush into this wash I've made. I know you can't see that. And I'm getting really full. I'm just really not wiping a great deal off, just enough so it won't drip coming over here to the paper. Now to make a flat wash, you want to get a bead of paint. And to do that, you've got to have your paper at an angle. I've got my table here tilted just for that. In fact, I've got it tilted quite a bit, so hopefully it'll make a very big bead you can see. I'm going to start on one side, and you want to cover the whole thing. So I'm moving across here. I got my brush down, going across. See that bead that it's making at the bottom? That's exactly what you want. Notice I don't want to run out. If I'm starting to run out, I either need to slow down or get some more paint. This is why using a small brush will not make a good wash for you. Now then, I'm taking the tip of my brush. I've just filled up my brush again with more paint, putting it right in that bead. And notice how it pulls the paint right down into a nice smooth line. You don't want to go too fast or too slow. Fill up your brush each stroke, or you'll run out before you get to the end of the next stroke. Here I am doing it again. Now the English, actually some will teach you to do just the opposite of what I'm doing. What they will do is use the heel of the brush into that bead and go across like this. I don't think that gives you as much control, but just to show you that there are other ways to do it. And see, it really didn't make much of a bead. So I'm just not really sold on that technique. And now what do? Okay, hey, if you go quick enough, you're okay. If you don't, you're in trouble. Now then, let's say, see these kind of lines here? Now they're gonna probably go away when this dries. But suppose I'm afraid not, and suppose I've really made bad ones. Look at this, oh my gosh. I tried to fix it, and now look what's happening. It's running, getting dry. I put some real lines in it there. That's really bad looking now. And I wanted a nice flat sky. What am I gonna do? How do I save this? You can turn them into clouds, that's one thing. But if you want to still try and save that nice wash before it dries, don't let it get dry. While it's still wet, take your mister and look at this. 1, 2 squirts maybe of water. That re-wet the whole thing. Now I can come back with my wash and I can just start right over at the top. And I'm gonna go all the way down. Now there's a lot of water on that paper already, so you don't wanna overdo too much wash there because see, it's flowing anyway. So you can make maybe 2 or 3 strokes with the same load of brush. And notice how it's just smoothing it all out. And you've just saved your picture. And now you've got a lot of water here. So what you've got to do is pick up the paper and tilt it and let it flow around. Now you can pick up this bottom bead. I'll do that before I do my flowing around bit here. Ooh, I got a lot of paint in that brush. Okay. Dip that out. Now notice I'm drying here. Where is that brush? Okay, I'm drying this brush. I'm gonna use my fingers here now, but you should really get what's called a thirsty brush. And you're drying it up like that. It's dry. If it's dry, it's gonna suck up the water all along the bottom there. So I don't get that bead, and I don't have to worry about that now because we're through with it. And now I'm just turning this paper whichever way it needs to go, letting that paint flow to a very nice, smooth finish. And as long as there's enough water there, it will flow around and you'll get your smooth sky, even if you feel like you've messed it up. So you can mess it up. Now then, suppose I decide to make a sky with too small a brush, which I see so many people try and do. Here I've got this number 6, and I'm trying to paint a sky. Okay, look, I can't get a bead hardly at all. There it's going, it's drying out. I keep having to dip back in. Whoops, that got too wet. Now I'm coming down here and this is already dried. So what am I gonna get? I'm gonna get a line. You know, you just can't do a decent wash with a little brush. It's not gonna work. So there you have that. Now then, just a really quick thing. Another thing, if you felt your sky was messed up and you wanted clouds anyway, take your tissue and make some clouds. This is where the Strathmore is really good. You can really lift out paint, whereas my nature sketch doesn't do this near as well. But you can see I made clouds. Quite nice. Now it just needs some shadow underneath it. For that, I'm using some purple, and we'll talk about mixing and all that another time. But right now, I'm just going to dash some in here right underneath the white, kind of mixing with the blue. And just a little bit of cloud shadow there. Now I want a soft edge. Whoa, we're running out of time. Soft edge on the bottom of clouds. So see, I'm taking water, clear water, on a pretty dry brush, and I'm softening some of those edges. Notice how they're staying hard up here. I can soften some of them as well with the brush. There we go. Okay. So, and we may want to give our clouds a little bit more warmth from the ground and just a general warm feeling. And for that, I'm going to use a little bit of a yellow, just a light yellow, just a touch in here. Okay, and then I'll spread that around maybe a bit with a damp brush. Okay, and so that just warmed up the cloud a bit. It doesn't show up terribly well there. Anyway, we are not getting as far along as I wanted to on this. Next week, we're going to just do a lot of painting. We're going to do washes. I want to grab my book here and show you how to get started on that wash. I gave you an exercise in here. Here we go. And I want you to do the wash just like I did. With the big washes, I would suggest on this small of a painting, you might use a number 10 to do that. Experiment. Probably on that sky, I would just go with my usual, my Zen brush here. I'm going to get some paint out real quick. I'm going to do it a little darker than normal. I'm going to have to tilt this down. Okay, and there's my one I made there. See, I'm starting right up here. I didn't tape this off particularly. I'm trying to go very quickly here. Not the best thing to do. Okay, got a little more paint made up. So we're going across here, making our sky. To do this, use any color, but make sure it's a dark color. Now notice you got to paint around a few objects here. And when you get through with the sky, you may want to stop and let it dry a bit before you try and do the mountains. Or conversely, you can bring your sky right down into the mountains because they're going to be darker anyway. And it'll add a little bit of unity to your picture. So there we've got that washed in really quickly with a large brush. You don't want to fiddle around. Don't take a little brush and try and get a lot of little detail there. This will all wash out quickly. Now you do want to switch to a smaller brush as you go into darker areas. But in watercolor, you do the largest areas first in general and work to the smaller detail. Also, you do light to dark. And I'm going to start down here with this foreground again, and I'm going to get some of that light in. And notice I made it a little darker. What I've done is just added a little more paint to the sky wash that I already had mixed up. And as you see in your instructions, you're wanting to look at tone. Tone is so much more important than color. If you got a picture that's all one tone, it's going to be boring. Sorry. So you got to work with tone. The eye sees everything by contrast. How can you tell that barn door is there? Because it's such a contrast around it. Each of these segments are differentiated because they have different contrast ones adjacent to them. When outside, you either see the tree as dark or light, depending on its surrounding environment. So I want you to kind of continue this. I'm going to make these mountains a little darker here. I'm using a really big brush on this. I always use the biggest brush I can to the end, and it doesn't matter if you get out of the lines. This is not kindergarten, and this is not a coloring book. We're painting. We have lines here just because it's convenient right now. And we'll learn to work with pencil lines and others as we continue on with this. Okay, I want to stop there in case there are some questions. On the handout, I've given you, again, a template here where you can fill in all your colors and practice a nice smooth wash for each one. I've also given you a painting of a little Presbyterian church. I thought it was appropriate since Life Quest, we do it at the Presbyterian church there, of this Boars Hill Kirk. It's on the coast of Scotland overlooking the sea. And again, do it in one color. Here I've used, I think I used burnt umber on this. Winsor Newton burnt umber. You can use sepia, you can use indigo, you can use ultramarine, anything dark. Indian red would work. Burnt sienna, Payne's gray, things like that. So that's there for you to practice on some more on just one color painting, and really strive for a variety of tones from the darkest dark to the white of your paper. As you can see there, we've got a real nice dark window here, darker color put in here. We haven't talked about that. And some of the ways I've done this wash, we'll talk about next week. Just do them flat right now. The idea is to practice getting a nice, smooth, flat wash as best you can. And try to consciously make some mistakes and see if you can correct them with a mister and things like that. Also do on here, notice that's still wet. And suppose I wanted to try and fix it. Oh my gosh. Right down here, this little hump here, I didn't like that. And suppose I wanted to try and smooth it out with more paint. Look what happens. You just mess it up. Go over something one time and leave it till it's dried or mist it down so it's really wet. Don't try to work into damp paper. All you will do is lift the paint off. It's already there. You'll smudge it around and it will never straighten out the way you want it to. So remember that one stroke with watercolor is all it really takes most of the time. Here I am. Anybody have any questions? We need to be wrapping this up. I think we're running out of time as always. I can keep talking for the next half an hour or 3 days. So any questions?
I don't see any questions. Nobody's shaking their head. Nobody's.
Oh.
Lynn unmuted herself. Go ahead, Lynn.
Next time, if you could be just a tiny bit further away, because when you, like, for example, when you showed your palette or when you showed one of the pictures you were working on,
yeah,
I could only see part of it.
Okay.
Or maybe a different angle.
Yeah, I'm really experimenting with trying to get this.
I know you are. And I'm going to send you an email a little later for a question for Art Outfitters. Okay?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Any of y'all that want to have a question, want to email me, that's just fine. Do it. I'll be glad to answer it best I can. And don't worry about interrupting me too. Anytime I'm talking, go ahead and interrupt.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The little pan things, are they cake colors or do you just get them empty and put your tube paint in them? I
always do tube paint. A lot of these kits will come with paint and I'll use those up a lot of times, but I'd much rather have empty pans. These little half pans are about 50 cents a piece, and fill them up with tube paint that I want. Because what comes with the palettes that you buy is not necessarily the colors you want to use.
Where do you buy those little those little half pan things?
What about them?
Where do you buy them?
Art Outfitters here in town has them, and you can order them off of Dick Blick on the internet or any of the art supply internet stores.
Could you also find that sort of thing at Michael's or Hobby
No,
Lobby?
I've not seen them at Michael's or Hobby Lobby at all.
Okay.
Yeah, I just buy them by the dozen, and that way, you can squirt just a little bit in. You don't have to fill the whole pan. And colors you don't use much or you're just trying out, you can just put a dot in there, and that way you don't waste the whole tube. I know some people will dump a whole tube into their palette, and if it's not a color you're going to use very often, that's going to sit there for a long time and really could dry out and crack. Cobalt teal, a color I really like, will crack if you leave it out a long time, and so will Winsor Newton raw sienna. It's a great color, but it's really gritty and will crack if it's set out and really dries hard. A lot of colors won't at all. Hansa yellow just has sort of an oily feel to it all the time and never really gets dry. So it really depends on the color, but I just really much prefer working in little half pans for most of what I do.
Lynn, go ahead.
Kenneth,
yeah,
this is probably a stupid question, but on your palette, because I've got a couple of different ones, I haven't put any paint in them because I'm not sure how to arrange them. Is there a particular way to arrange the colors in the palette?
Nothing is set in stone, Here's how I have mine. I've got the blues all together and the greens all together, and I'm going towards the warm on the other side here with yellows and then my reds. And then I've got earth colors over here at this end, and Payne's gray right there. And the rest of these are a couple of purples and a couple of greens next to those greens. And these are all earth colors of various kinds.
Now, Ken, I don't know anything about painting, and so I would worry about where to put light colors. Would I want light colors on the outside or somewhere where dark colors couldn't? How would I separate light colors so that dark colors wouldn't drip in it while I was moving my brush away?
Oh, I wouldn't worry about it.
Okay, good.
You can, if you really need a clean color, you can just wipe them out with a damp brush, and you'll pick up a little color, and you really won't waste any at all cleaning off the top of your colors. So like this red here, I don't know if you can tell, but that red's looks like some blue in it, some things like that. And my yellow here, it's looking a little brown. If I used it for some strong yellow, I'd want to wipe it out a bit with a brush. It happens. Some people, you can't even tell what colors they have. They've got so many colors mixed on, but a little bit of wiping and you get down to it. So don't really worry about it. This is buff titanium here, which is a very, very light color. And I've got, looks like some green or Payne's gray dropped into it that I need to clean out before I used it. But yeah, don't worry.
Okay, that's awesome. Go ahead, Lynn.
Are the handouts he mentioned going to be on the website that we can print off?
We have the supply list, but I think he emailed the handouts. But
I emailed everyone a copy of the handout.
Oh, you did already?
Yeah, yesterday.
Okay.
If not, email me and I'll easily send it out again. No problem.
I probably just didn't see it. Thank you.
Yeah, they're on there, and it's very detailed instructions on all of this I've talked about today. So that probably it's better and more cohesively written than I speak. So
thank you.
I tried not to leave anything out.
Ken, I'm sorry that we're getting close to running out of time. And so if people want to email you questions, they can. But I really appreciate you working with us again this summer. And I think this was a good start, a good overview of colors and supplies and paper and just getting started with a wash and that kind of thing.
We'll do a lot more painting next time.
Yes, that'll be exciting for people. 4 weeks won't be nearly long enough. And
no, it's really not. We'll get the basics.
Getting the basics is all we ask this summer. So we appreciate you, and we'll see you again next week. I look forward to seeing all of you in other classes if you can come.
And thank you too, Gina, for making this available.
It takes a village. It's not just me. It's LifeQuest and all the teachers who won't stop teaching. So we're glad to have them.
Work on those washes. Try and get them smooth, and look at that bead.
All right. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Let's see. Okay.
All right, Judy, let's go to the next class. Charge. I can't hear you. Hold on. Hold on. Oh, there you are.
Next week, I'm going to have this set up on my desktop.
Okay, if you want to join me next, we're going to do Great American Composers with Dick Williams.
Sure.
So you can go to the website and click the link and it should take you there. They're getting that class set up at the office right now as we speak.
If there's someone who's obviously there but hasn't got their video on, should they be asked if they want to turn it on? Or
well,
I'm thinking of Joe Janwa.
Right. For this class, I wasn't worried about it. I think Joy was a person whose camera doesn't work, if I remember correctly. She is still there, but maybe she's trying to sign off. Let me ask her to unmute. Joe?
I think I did unmute. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
I can't
we
get
were
to
just
my camera.
What I'm doing.
I can't get to my camera. That's why you're not seeing me.
okay. That's perfectly fine. We just
And
wanted to make sure.
My last name is Jones, Jones.
Yes, I figured it was.
Because that's
I
not
knew
how
it was
it's done.
registered. So, yeah. Okay. Well, we'll see you later.
Okay, I enjoyed it, even though
Thank
you
you.
couldn't see me.
It's okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to end this meeting.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Barbara?
With my phone call.
I'll go ahead and end the meeting on the other computer. Okay.